about what's going on directly, they can go to the army. I'm also all for informing the army as well. But primarily, what I'm trying to do, and I think Amanda and Paul are trying to do, is to inform the police, because there is evidence of a crime. Okay, if you take the trouble to read hundreds of pages and follow the links, you will find this evidence of a crime, and that's the job of the police, to think in these terms, to follow this kind of investigation. As Paul and Amanda mentioned, these are just human beings like us who will also suffer from the consequences of this crime. So to inform them about it, it is also doing them a favor. And if the police are on the side of the community, they will be the most effective protectors of the community. Bear in mind, time is running short, and it's really important to inform as many of the local police as possible before the mass vaccinations begin. Also schools, hospitals. I showed my latest set of charges or whatever to two doctors, and they burst into tears. They said it all sounded very plausible and highly likely, and that they were going to refuse to give anybody this vaccination. So the doctors as well are just ordinary people who are not aware about the background to these vaccines and who need to be informed.
I don't want to pour cold water on this idea of going to the police and so on, but I had a guest on here recently, Chris Coverdale, who wanted to prosecute politicians, for instance, for war crimes because of illegal wars. And he had reported these war crimes to the police on many occasions, and basically it always got squashed before it got too far. Isn't it likely that the powers that be will squash complaints about this in the same way?
They will certainly try, but if anybody who reads through the evidence will realise, any policeman or policewoman, that it's their lives that are going to be at stake. They and their family members will also be getting this injection. They'll also be coming under the authority of WHO, and their incentive to keep on crushing the evidence will be much less. And if enough police forces of the base get together and refuse to go along with it, then these people at the top who have been crushing all their war crimes and other things that don't immediately affect the police, so they can, turn away from it more easily, could find themselves in jail.
Carol here says, if we go to the police, wouldn't we be putting our lives in danger?
Absolutely not. As a citizen, you have the right to report a crime, and in fact, it's your duty to report a crime. In America, it's quite clear that if you're aware of a crime and don't report it, you yourself are, committing a crime. And the police are just ordinary people like us. Unfortunately, the culture has been increasingly one of estrangement between the police and the members of the public and fear. But this is an artificially created barrier which has to be broken by people simply going into the police station and talking to people. I've had a very positive experience with my summons here in Austria. The policeman listened to me, asked questions, took all my information, was extremely respectful to me, had no problems at all from the police. I've heard of people filing charges in Holland and France and Switzerland, no problems at all, and in Sweden, no problems. And I think Paul has also had a positive experience.
So, Paul, yeah.
When I found out, I downloaded Jane's documents and I read them through and made myself familiar with the case, wrote a summary letter and went into the police myself in my town, in Wicklow in Ireland. And yeah, they brought me in, I spoke to a detective for an hour and he was very interested.
You spoke to a detective? They put it up to that level, did they?
Yeah. And he said he asked a lot of very good questions and we had a good discussion for an hour. And towards the end he said, I really would love to be able to say that you're crazy, but you don't appear to be crazy. And he says, I'm worried about this. So I asked him to get himself familiar with it, read the evidence. I gave CDs. Jane has done a lot of radio interviews now, so I downloaded them and burnt them onto a CD, a couple of CDs, and said pass them around your colleagues, pass the evidence document around your colleagues. I went in, I think a good way of doing it is to go into the police wherever you are, and certainly don't be afraid, but just stress that with this very incredible file of document or of evidence has been presented to the police in Austria as the start off, and they read it, as Jane says, and they acted on it, so it can't be dismissed very easily. And yeah, just explain as best you can. On Jane's site, there's the documents and some cover letters as well that you can download or write your own little summary, or just go in and talk to the police. At the end of it, the detective I spoke to said he certainly would inform his colleagues, and he'd pass it up to the National Bureau of Criminal Investigation. Now, he said, which was fair enough of him, when they get there, he wrote a statement from what I verbally told him as well to accompany it. And he said, if it goes to the National Bureau of Criminal Investigation, they might read and think I'm a crank and throw it in the bin, or they might read it and act on it. But if 10 more people, or 20, or 100, or 1,000 people do the same thing in police stations all across the country, they can't dismiss it then, they have to act on it. And if you read, especially police are trained to solve crime, it's what they do. This is in their field and it's their job, and it affects them, and if it's true, it's going to possibly kill them and their loved ones. And if they read through the documents, there's no way any sane person can read through the documents and conclude that it's all a sham. There's something going on here at the very least. So by all means, we encourage people, go to the police. There's been a divergence lately, and it's manufactured by the people ultimately responsible for this, using the media and using contrived exaggeration of crimes to diverge the police away from the community and form an us against them situation. And we need to stop that and have people approach the police. Police are part of the community. You know, they're police have families and they live, you know, in the communities with us, and we need to be able to approach the police. The police are not to be feared.
Okay, well...
Oh, and by the way, my charges are being passed on to Special Branch, and she took me seriously. She said, some people... She said, are you lucky? She said, some. She said, I'm not saying it one way or the other, but I think this is important enough to pass on to Special Branch. What's going to happen from there, I don't know, but you could have come in and seen someone else, and they just would have laughed at you, put it in the bin. She said, but I promise you, and she said it several times, this is definitely going to be sent to Special Branch.
Well, good for her. Good for her. Dennis has said here, if MPs acted now, they could suspend any ideas of forced vaccination, but once the programme is implemented, there will be no stopping it. So I take from that Dennis is maybe saying, is there anything that we can do to influence the government?
Certainly, what myself and Amanda have been doing, and other people as well, we've been trawling the internet, and any place we can get email addresses for politicians, the army, health executives.
They're all on the government website.
If you spend enough time, you can get them.
Politicians' email address is on the website.
Yeah, and
whether they read those emails is another matter. But
yeah, on some of the parties' websites, you need to go through a form to send. You know, you can't.
They're all on the House of Commons website.
Are they? Yeah. Well, I haven't looked there. Amanda has actually got all of those. Yeah. That's where you got them, wasn't it?
I don't know about the Irish Parliament.
Well, they're all on the separate parties' website. So I spent a few days and got them, and I've emailed them all, and I'm starting to get some replies. And I just wrote a letter going, look, if this is true, do you want it to happen? I also emailed, and we emailed the health and safety executives, any police emails you can get, anybody, the media particularly. I've emailed all the media in Ireland.
I mean, we're dealing with kind of a lot of cynicism here. I mean, I've got texts coming in saying, you know, police can't be trusted. I've got Jim from Larne says, politicians have no problem putting money before health and look at BSc and CJD. Gerard in London says police are not George Dixon anymore.
But is that a reason not to do something? Is that an excuse not to go and file these charges? We're not talking about that. We're talking about this that's happening now in the next few weeks.
So if you accept that there's something going on, there's a kind of moral obligation, isn't there?
Yeah, this is why we're here. Because
it's going to happen very soon, isn't it? It's either going to happen or it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
If it does happen and you file charges, then...
No harm done. And also, as a consequence of filing these charges go beyond the vaccine thing into the core of the problem, which is a criminal syndicate. And this is not all they've done. This is a big tip, but it's still only the tip of the iceberg. There's some serious criminality going on here. These people are linked with the financial collapse and a host of other things. So it will lead on to eventual expose, hopefully. It's inevitable if it happens, of all of these crimes. As we finally get to the bottom of what's going on, your viewers are all people who are aware that there's conspiracies of various levels going on in various different topics, and everyone is looking for an end to the secrecy. But they don't have something to focus on to lever this secrecy, the lid off this secrecy box. In my opinion, this can do that. So there's very big consequences of it. OK, something that occurs to me, Jane, I'm going to ask you this. If these vaccines, and I know you're saying that they're in 3 stages and that possibly they may contain RFID chips and all kinds of stuff, and also they're programmed to do certain things to the body which cause basically death. Could it not be possible for people who are involved with the dissemination of these vaccines to analyse them, maybe, you know, privately analyse them? Is there no way that people who are microbiologists, for instance, could say, right, I'll have a look?
There is. My understanding